Jenn Kennedy, welcome to the Thought Room.
Thank you.
I'm so excited that you're here. We just had the best talk, before we hit record because we were waiting for the sounds of the lawnmower and the landscape.
The beautiful natural sounds.
Yes, the relaxing sounds of the lawnscaping. So here we are. And we actually have a very synchronistic story of how we were first introduced, right? I was remembering that. And this will actually resonate with a lot of listeners because the day that I recorded the interview with Nick Onken on this show, we hit it off so well. And he was like, "Oh, I'm staying with friends. Do you want to come to dinner?" So we go to his friend's house, which is you and your husband, Pat. And we're sitting in the living room after dinner. I was like, wow, these people are so sweet. I feel such alignment with them. And we're talking about plant medicine. We're talking about, I was talking about, especially since I've been caring for my body in a different way, my sensitivity to psychedelics, plant medicines is really, I have quite a low threshold.
Yeah.
And I was describing that I had some psilocybin and it was like 0.7 grams and I was really feeling it like it was a few weeks before. And your husband, Patrick said, "Oh, I have a friend like that who's super sensitive." And I said, What's your friend's name? And it was a question that, in retrospect is a little bit nosy, but it's because I already knew the answer.
Literally.
And there was this impulse in me that just absolutely just had to ask him this question. And he said, "Oh, he was protecting identity." And he's like, "Oh, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know them. They don't live here." And I literally said, Is it Danny?" He looked like panicked. He was like, "How did I just reveal this? And how does this person even know?" And so we figured out that my best dear friend, my beloved Danny Rain, was friends with Patrick. And they had, they would talk sometimes and they had this deep connection.
They would FaceTime like every week for a while.
And we had no idea. I had no connection to the two of you outside of that. And here Nick literally brought me to your door and into your home. It's just so amazing the way that we constellate around people and that life connects us, and was so joyful to have the two of you at my birthday celebration and the celebration of the podcast the other week. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, of course.
Yeah. And you actually got to meet Danny for the first time there.
It was like a full circle moment.
Yeah.
And Nick was back in town.
And Nick was in town for it. So it was just such a beautiful little reunion.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. The divinity of it.
The divinity.
Like, because I remember I actually met Nick for lunch that day. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to this girl. I've met her before. She messaged me to see if she wanted to do a podcast." And then that night, he's like, "I'm going to bring a friend over." And it was just when it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Completely. And we've also had similar experiences this year, both of us going to Joe Dispenza retreats in Cancun. I went in February and you went in June?
Just last month, June. Yes.
How was that experience?
Oh my gosh. Whew. I mean, there's no words. It's kind of like trying to describe a journey.
Totally.
A ceremony.
Yeah.
You're like, well, let me try to put this into human words. I mean, it is the one that like my biggest thing that I get to say from it is that we've always known that we had the ability to co-create our reality, but it's like the power that is activated on every cell of your being when we live in our heart and when we truly connect with source, that we have the like immense joy that this world is a playground and we get to literally co-create anything that we desire in this world.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
It is just like that feeling, like we all know that in our mind, but it's like that feeling that you go through for an entire week of connecting with the divine.
So you're embodied with it.
It's like truth in every single cell of your being.
Yeah.
Like you're like, this is just what is.
Yeah.
This is what is.
Yeah. It's that deep knowing that I think a lot of us crave. And here's the tricky thing with especially being involved in whatever the spiritual world or the spiritual community is, Sometimes you don't always feel it. And that's where all these kind of distortions get created. And that's where people listening to us get agitated because they're like, what do they mean live from their heart and be connected with divine source? Like, what the fuck? You know, they're like, what are they? They're up in the clouds. But when you've had an experience of that aliveness that is indescribable, it's just, I felt like that after ayahuasca. I felt like that after Joe Dispenza. And it reminds us why we are here. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. So we can dive into more of that today. But I must say, we took 3 breaths before we hit record, and I was trying to focus on my breath, but I was silently very impressed by like your slow, long breath holds. I was like, she's been practicing her Joe Dispenza. You can just tell. We should make t-shirts like, bro, do you even breath hold?
Do you even know?
Do you even breath work?
Know?
Yeah.
It is so true. The power that we hold within our breath, like it heals us. It takes us anywhere that we needed to go. Like, it's like it beats a sip of coffee.
Right. Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. You can fully oxygenate yourself. I'll have days like that where I'll sit down and take a moment and it'll be like 5 p.m. and I'll recognize, oh, I haven't breathed today.
Literally.
I've been breathing. Something has been breathing me in the background, but I haven't been aware of that thing that's breathing me. And I haven't been participating in making a conscious choice about how I'd like to breathe.
Yes.
So that's the thing about the breath is I talked about this actually on the last podcast I recorded, where it's this portal. It is an autonomic function. It's happening.
Yep.
But when we collect our attention and we say, this is the thing I want to focus on right now in this present moment, my breath, and we sustain that, you will experience an altered state.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying you're going to start tripping. You might if you're doing DMT breath work or really intense breath holds. But in the same way that you when you're in a good mood, you're altered. It's when we pay attention to our breath and we're oxygenating our bodies more and we're slowing down our heart rate and we're being intentional about checking in with different parts of our bodies. It's an altered state.
It literally is. And I think a lot of people think that it has to be complicated. Like you've got to learn a breath pattern and you've got to do breath work and you've got to do a 20-minute session, whatever it is. But just as simple as when you wake up first thing in the morning, getting those breaths and sitting in gratitude with those breaths and really getting into the energy of what you desire, how you desire the day to go, even before you get out of bed.
Yes.
And then checking in with yourself throughout the day. When I was first making this a practice of mine, like an embodiment of mine, I would have alarms on my phone that would go off throughout the day that would tell me to do specific things. And I would take 3 to 5 deep breaths. So like check in with little girl Jenn. Check in with your highest self. Check in with, how your day is going. Like check in with your husband. Like, and I would have these alarms throughout the day that just allowed me to stop and just 3 to 5 breaths and just check in. And it changed. So often we live in the fight or flight and we don't even realize we're living in a higher state of cortisol response in our body. But when you do that, it's just smooth sailing throughout the day.
Okay. So talk to me about what does it look like to check in with little girl Jenn and what does it look like to check in with higher self? How can someone listening kind of embody that practice as well?
Yeah. So obviously when I say like little girl Jenn, I could go back to like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 15, right? Like any part of me. So when I do it, I just say check in with little girl Jenn, and whatever part comes up, I just honor that part. So instead of like going back to a certain age, I'm just like, that's the part. And my little girl, I think probably so many of us, I grew up way too quick, right? Divorced parents, grew up very quick. My imagination, my creativity, everything was just right. Like,
ouch,
squash,
big fall from Eden. That hurt.
Yes. And so, my playful side and my joy and my fun and that excitement, like she just went away at a very young age. So whenever I check in, it's like with that fun, loving, playful side of me.
Got it.
Instead of like, I mean, all of us do so much of the work, right? Of the abandoned little girl, Jenn, whose father left at a young age, or the responsibility that I took on as a little girl, but I always check in with like the fun part of me.
I see.
You know?
So like your idyllic inner child and her full expression.
Yes.
Great. Like, what does she want to do today? How does she want to breathe today?
Yes. And what does she want to do with work today? What does she want to do with going out today? You know, like, and just letting her be. And sometimes I check in and then I like drop everything I'm doing and I'll go run outside with the dogs and cartwheel and handstand and play in the grass. And sometimes I'll, I'm going to stop this and I'm actually going to bring out my coloring book and I'm just going to color for a while. And sometimes it's call a friend and sometimes it's just carry on, but do it with more joy and with more intention on the love and the excitement of what you're doing.
Yes.
So that's
I love that.
The little girl, Jen.
I love the alarms too. That's such a good thing. I had Garen Jones on this show a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about setting yourself booby traps, like of positivity.
I love that.
Yeah. And he was speaking about getting into his car. And every time he gets into his car that's custom and that he loves, it's that reminder, and he entrains himself with that expansive feeling. So in whatever way we can, setting those little positivity booby traps to serve like little anchors or markers in time for us to really recalibrate.
100%. I used to do it in my old house when we lived in Michigan in my office. When I walked into my office, it was like what's the intention? What's the happiness that you're bringing into all of your work? But I love that. Like I have that with my car. I just never realized I did it.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I bet you have that all over because I look at you and you are so consistently radiant and I'm no fool. I know it. I know that's not always
my first
the case.
rodeo.
I know that's not always the case. Yeah. And I know that you're doing such deep inner work always behind the scenes. And that's just so obvious because of the way that you speak about your partner, the way the two of you are in supporting one another. And wow, that was something that stuck out the first night that I met you was the way that Patrick was talking about how he had stepped into his sacred masculine to really elevate your business and all that he had to work through with his own ego about like what that looked like as the man. And so I'm so excited for you to go into any and all of this today. And I'd really love to talk about what you do as a wealth and abundance coach, primarily for women. Is that correct?
Yeah. I work with men too.
Yeah, you work with men too.
Primarily women.
And you're always putting out this super inspiring content. My jaw's on the floor. I'm just like, wow, Jenn is like just all your Instagram stories are so bright. They're so encouraging and they're so aesthetic, which really matters to me.
Has to.
If I can admit.
Yeah, we like nice things,
yes, Yeah. So just beautiful job.
Thank you, love.
Beautiful job. And I know it's been no small feat to get here. So I'd love to hear about your journey. Yeah. I'm guessing it didn't start with wealth.
You could assume that. Yes.
I could.
Yes. And
could
you'd be
I?
correct.
Would I be correct?
And you would be very correct.
Yeah.
So gosh, I'm like, where do we start? I already mentioned, grew up with divorced parents, right? So from a very young age, there was a lot of, let's just say, brokenness in the home, and nothing. I'm so close with my parents. We all done so much healing together. And I'm so grateful for every single ounce of our lives and upbringing, because it truly, I chose it, right? They chose it and it led me here. So growing up, single mom, my mom is, she's a force, she's a single mom raising my brother and I. My brother's 18 months younger than me. And as the oldest daughter, I heard a lot of what was happening in our lives that I probably didn't need to hear. But
how old were you at this point when your parents divorced?
They divorced when I was 5. They officially divorced when I was 5.
Okay.
My dad left a couple of years prior.
Okay.
And then we had a lot of death in our family. My mom's dad died when she was pregnant with me. My grandparents, on my dad's side, both passed away when I was 3. So there's a lot. Those first 5 years of life were a lot of the stuff. We can just call it all of that.
Your mother's father died while she was pregnant with you. I'm just thinking about the hormonal imprint,
literally
the stress, the grief,
the work that I've done
as
from the
she
womb.
was building, as your embryo was forming.
100%.
It was stressful from the start. Yeah.
From conception.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's been, all of that, right? First 5 years. And so what does little girl Jenn do? Well, everyone's a basket case around her and everyone's a mess. And no one really wants to talk or feel their emotions. Everyone's just kind of feeling them, under the radar and compartmentalizing them. So I'll just be the light. I'll just bring the joy and I'll just be the glue to try to hold all this together. And that was the role that I took on as a little girl. So much of my upbringing was just that, I knew that I saw the financial problems from both parents. I saw the child support. I saw this bill is coming. I didn't even need to hear it, even though I did hear a lot. I just seeing, grocery store trips. We couldn't go out to dinner. Our idea of going out to dinner was Burger King and Taco Bell and Wendy's. That was a big deal for us. All my friends going on vacations, we never could, right? So it's just, I grew up in a world where money very much told me what I could and what I couldn't do. And it more so defined what I couldn't do and who I wasn't. I wanted to be a cheerleader growing up. I've just always had this bubbly personality. My mom was like, do you understand how much those uniforms cost, right? We had the neighbors down the street that we got all the hand-me-downs, and that was just life. We went to my dad's every other weekend, and that was just life. I had alcoholism in my family. Both sides of my family run very deep. My dad got sober when I was 20, and he's been sober ever since. And there was just a lot of struggle, just a lot of struggle. And my job, my whole upbringing was just be the light, just numb your emotions. Don't worry about it. Don't show that you're sad. Don't show that you're upset. Don't cry, and just be the light for everyone. So I wanted to help people my whole life. From a young age, my dad always was like, you go to a party and you find the one kid that needs help and you're they're helping them. Just my whole upbringing, I love people. I love kids. And I've always seen what's possible for people, really, truly. And I'm well, let me just help you get there. That was just my whole life. And in high school, I worked with the special ed kids the first 2 hours of the day. I went into the elementary schools. I just love helping people. So growing up, what were us growing up? We had two options to help people, right? Be a nurse or be a teacher. That was really, that was the world. That was what we knew. I don't do well with blood or bedside manner. It wasn't going to be my thing. So I decided to be a teacher. So I went to school to be a teacher.
I didn't know this about you.
Oh,
did you know I did that too?
No.
Yeah. I have a Bachelor of Education and also some Waldorf teacher training.
Stop.
Yeah, I taught elementary.
Oh my, I taught elementary for 8.5 years.
I see this.
Yeah.
I can see this.
So my first year being an elementary school teacher. So I went to school, did the student loans, wanted a college experience. So I went to Michigan State. I was I'm going to do a Big Ten school. We're going to do the football thing. Loved every second of it. Tons of student loans. Came out, worked as a teacher. And then my first year, I was I don't only want to teach. I don't want to help a classroom of 20 kids. I want to help a whole school. So actually, that was the same year I met my husband. I went back to school, got my master's degree, went back to school again and got my ed specialist degree. I refused to go into debt because I had, $60,000 worth of debt already. And I was making, $35,000 as a teacher. So then I tutored anywhere from 5 to 20 hours a week, making $50 an hour tutoring. And I just kept saving up my cash to then be able to pay for grad school. So I did this for 6.5 years. And I was just grinding, just going and just grinding and just going and grinding. And I just knew I loved helping people. And that was all that I had. That was all that was driving me. And then from there, all of a sudden, I went through my own weight loss journey. I had an eating disorder all through college.
I didn't know this.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. You had an eating disorder.
Yep. Well, that's what happens when you numb all of your emotions for your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
well, tell me about that.
Yeah. So, right, my whole life, numbing the emotions, could never express anything, never felt safe to express anything.
Were you aware that you weren't expressing something? Or do you think it was, okay, I think that needs to be said because a lot of times people, myself included, I've been I don't think I know what's going on in here and I'm not aware, but then there's these addictions or there's these patterns. And so I think that's really important that these things were occurring.
Yeah.
You can now see it's because there was emotions that were stored in unprocessed, unconscious material. But at the time,
no clue.
There was just manifesting as disordered eating and things like that.
A lot of alcohol.
Right.
Junior, senior year of college, and then all through college. God, I blacked out 6 days a week.
Right.
And that was just normal.
Completely.
It was just completely normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Been
when
there.
yeah, right.
Yeah. I'm not even going to lie about it. Yeah.
For sure.
Been there.
Like it really was normal. And I look back and I'm like, oh gosh, thank you team, my spirit team for like just making sure I always got home and I always was okay. Like when I was in a sorority at a Big Ten school and that was just what we did.
Right.
That was just normal.
Yeah.
So the eating disorder started in college and it's so interesting. It was about 5.5 years of my life and I knew nothing, right? Knew nothing about emotions, trauma.
Weren't in therapy, had never been in therapy.
Never.
Wow.
Never.
Okay.
I didn't even know therapy was a thing.
Wow.
I had no clue, any of it. So I'm in college. It's my senior year of college. And a year prior, or probably like 6 months prior, my dad had gotten sober. And he sat my brother and I down. We came home for Father's Day. I was 20 years old. And I remember driving to my Father's Day brunch and told my brother, I don't really know what to get Dad. I wish I was 21 because I just get him a bottle of vodka. Because my dad was always like the life of the party drinker.
Wow.
So we sit down at that lunch. I'm hungover, shocking. And he looks at both of us in the eye and he says, I have to talk to you guys about something serious. And he's like, I'm an alcoholic. I've been an alcoholic my whole life. You have alcoholism on both lines of your, both bloodlines. The neighborhood that I grew up in, they were all alcoholics. So it was like porch parties every single night and, summer drinking by the pool. He's like, alcoholism is in your blood. Addiction is in your blood. You've seen it your whole entire life. And I draw the line and like, we're done. Like it stops here.
Wow.
Like it's done. And I'm 20 years old. I'm in college, right? And I'm like,
you're like, that's cute, Dad.
That's
yeah.
And I was like, and I remember the conversation and we, he's asked a ton of questions. I went to so many Al-Anon meetings with him the years after that. And just understanding when he said that it's in your blood and it's in your system, like it stops here. I was like, I do have an addiction to alcohol, but I'm in college and like, this is the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
But I also at the same time had an eating disorder. So then I lived with him the year after I was in college. I was student teaching and then I was driving back to Michigan State for my classes. And he started going to meetings and he would just say, just come to Al-Anon meeting. Al-Anon is for the family, just come. So I would just go every once in a while. I would just go. And the whole time I was obviously learning what it was like to have alcoholism, as in my parents. But then it was like always this in the back of my mind, like, okay, well, this is the same exact thing with me and food. Like me and sugar, me and carbs, it's the same exact thing. So
what were they saying that was making you make that connection?
It was a lot of how it was out of your control, like alcoholism, addiction, it's out of your control. It's like it's not about, how often that you drink or whatever it is. It's about what happens. It's about the loss of control. Like
feeling like you don't have a choice. And you kind of, is it like you wake up in the moment while you're doing the thing, or sometimes even not at all, but there's an awareness of, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, or I don't want to be doing
I don't want to be doing this.
But you're already reaching for the thing, or you're already doing it.
And I can't stop. Like, why can't I stop?
Yes.
Right.
And the anxiety that comes with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the shame.
Right.
That happens after of like, why am I not strong enough?
Right.
Why don't I have the willpower to be able to do this?
Yes.
And so much of it, I was just understanding through my relationship with food, and obviously my previous relationship with alcohol, and then what I see with my dad. And my dad and I have always been very close. And, I was living with him for about 1.5 years. And so it was, our conversations, it's normal, even still to this day, for us to just start talking about addiction and in struggle and power and all, like, it's just a normal part of our relationship. So I was living with him, we started to have these conversations, and then but it still wasn't clicking with the alcohol or with the overeating and the eating disorder. And so from then I started to just try to learn a little bit more about it. And I was literally like stuck. Therapy, even if I knew the power of it, I did not have the money to be able to afford it. So it was just like, okay, that's off the books. And so eventually a few months later, after all of this, I found CrossFit. And
you and Danny have such similar stories.
Really?
Did you know that?
No.
She also battled eating disorder she's lost over 120 something.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
She'll correct me exactly how much weight. It's more than my body weight that woman has lost. And so she went through that whole cycle and the body dysmorphia, and then she found CrossFit.
Oh my gosh, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, I cannot wait to drop in with her more.
Yeah.
So then I found CrossFit. And at the same exact time, I was, teaching, and it wasn't in my master's yet, but I was teaching and I was learning, in my teaching about leadership and just about ourselves and how we, hold the space for classrooms and and all of these different, I was learning a lot of different things within the education field. Then I found CrossFit. And when I found CrossFit within like a week, I had no issues with my eating.
Wow. Okay. I want to butt in here for a second.
Yeah.
What do you think CrossFit gave you as far as a channel to channel certain energy, to transmute? What did that give you that was previously being met by the eating disorder?
So CrossFit showed me a different strength. Right before, my definition of strength was like overcome your struggles and then you're stronger. Like I literally had a quote on my wall growing up, like your struggles make your strengths, right? And that was just what strength was. Like, well, I've been through all of this and now I'm on the other side of it.
Right. So there's almost like an identification or a gold star with the suffering.
100%.
It's like, this suffering makes me a good little girl,
and I'm stronger on the other side. And then like, look at my badge. I did it.
Right. So the more suffering, the more celebration.
Right.
If we
the more
create
overcoming.
That story.
100%.
And then there's a lot of like attracting huge pendulating catastrophe and chaos and emotional turmoil. Yes. Cool.
So CrossFit then showed me like a different strength that it brought out a different strength, and it brought out a different level of commitment than I had ever had for myself. I'd always been I was an athlete my whole life. So I would go to the gym with my dad. I would go to practice. I would run the sprints. I would do all this stuff because I had to. I was an athlete, right? But when I found CrossFit, like I woke up in the morning at 5, which for me is like I'm a fan of no alarm and wake up at like 9. Yeah. Like you could not pay me to get out of bed at 5 nowadays, but I was teaching. So that's all I had to do.
Right.
And so it showed me this like different level of commitment that I had to myself and this love that I had for myself. Before, I just worked out because I wanted to get skinnier. I wanted to go to the gym because I wanted to look better. But then I literally found this like, oh my, like I'm a badass. Like, whoa, I can do this. I can do this. And I fell in love with myself through this act, if you will, of CrossFit.
So the energy, if I sink into that, is the energy of giving a gift to yourself. Whereas the eating disorder was, we need to get this out because we fucked up or we're disgusting or whatever the story is. That's that track on the mind that's playing in the subconscious that we're not necessarily conscious of, that's driving us to the addictive behaviors. And when you transferred that energy over to something that allowed you to tune in with an inner voice that was loving, this emotional addiction, which also created a physical addiction, started to naturally dissolve.
Yeah. Like to the point I didn't even realize it.
Right.
Like it was just one day I was like, that hasn't been an issue in like a week, 2 weeks, a month. I'm like, wait a second, hold on. And so I fell in love with CrossFit, with who I became in CrossFit.
Yeah.
And, pair that with like I was teaching and loving every second of it. And it just was like, a whole new version of me was born.
Wow. And you were with your husband?
I actually met him at CrossFit.
No way.
Like 6 months later.
Wow.
Yeah.
So all of this stuff with the eating disorder was sort of before you met him. This is interesting. And then you changed channels into like a deeper self-love. And then you attracted your life partner.
Yes.
Are people hearing this? I think this is important.
Hold on.
I don't know. I feel like that's worth a highlight or an underscore right there.
Yeah. So, and I actually was dating a guy for 6.5 years before I met Pat.
Wow.
And so when I first started CrossFit, I was in that relationship. And then just one day, it's funny when I look back then, I had no idea. Now looking back now, I'm like, oh, well, okay. Like I just woke up one day, amazing human.
Yeah.
Great relationship.
Yep.
Amazing. And I just woke up one day and I was like, yeah, this isn't it.
Yeah.
And I just got to break up with him.
Yeah.
And it was like, everyone was like, why are you doing this? I'm like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. How did he receive that? That had to be hard.
Actually really well. Really well.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm like to this day, like if I ran into him, like I would love to see him now. And I would love for Pat to meet him now. And it actually was a really civilly beautiful
I love that.
Before like conscious uncoupling was a thing. Like it's really what it was, before and I wasn't even conscious at the time,
Right. Right.
So it was a beautiful thing. So I ended that relationship and was just enjoying single Jenn and just like finding myself and all of that. And then Pat rolls around and I'm like, this is the last thing I want is a relationship. The last thing that I desire right now is a relationship, but we couldn't really deny it. We've done this many times together.
Yeah.
And then our relationship started, and then I started my master's degree, which is where that was, my 2 degrees are in leadership and administration. So that was like, who are you? Right. And it was just this deep rabbit hole of leadership.
Yeah.
And so that was my life. And that was my life before, my life now. And I'm looking back, it's so beautiful, right? Like all the teaching, all the leading, all of the overcoming work, and just such a beautiful gift. And then, what I was saying, how I got into being an entrepreneur was I lost all this weight and I had this glow about me, and everyone at CrossFit was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you eating? Everyone's like, what are you eating? And I'm like, well, this is what I'm doing. And at the gym, Pat used to joke all the time. He's like, I swear to you, you have a thing on your forehead that just says, I will help you, ask me. Because I would go to the gym and I would hours would go by and I wouldn't work out. I would just sit and just help people. And they're like, well, I'm having a hard time with this. And I was like, well, let me tell you about it. Right. Through all of the work that I was doing in my leadership and understanding my mind and my subconscious mind. And I was just helping people. And then one woman was like, can I just pay you to be my coach?
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know what that looks like. So people started paying me.
Wow.
And I went into the kitchen one day. We were in our little townhouse and I was like, hey, babe, I think that I need to have a business or something because people are paying me on Venmo to help them. And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, I think I have a business. Wow. And so he created I had no idea he created my LLC and everything. And then I went and got certified in nutrition and just help people do that. And that was my first stint of being an entrepreneur.
So you basically got called out for this natural
literally
coaching tendency. Yep. And so I'm so curious because I know that we'll get to talking about this now. And I know last year you hit a really big financial milestone. And I always like to say these things to tell people, where we got started. I talk about also tutoring in New York City and sometimes I'd make tutoring and babysitting as I was launching my own business, and I would make $75 to $200 a week.
Literally.
Because I refused to go back to working for anybody else. And it's not like this just all popped up.
Right.
It's been these tiny little breadcrumbs along the way. So when that first person was like, can I pay you? Were you just like, yeah, give me $50, give me $100. Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So what did that look like?
The journey of valuing yourself and what you're offering.
Yes.
And that riding that line of being humble, not charging more than we need to, but also really understanding how much time and energy we have to spend on various things and how do we create our ideal life.
Yeah. Well, at first, none of that. At first, I literally had the worst relationship and the worst, we could call it money mindset of anyone on this planet. I swear to you. It was, I was working with a nutrition coach and I was paying her $200 a month.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, there's no way that I could charge that much because she's been doing it longer.
Right.
And I just had a horrible relationship with money my whole life. I was in debt. I was in massive credit card debt, all that whole journey. I mean, I was in I had 4 credit cards and I maxed them all out. I literally thought credit cards were God's gift to the earth. I was like, oh, I didn't know what an interest rate was. I was like, oh my God, wait, I have money, but I can spend this money, but I don't have it and I can spend it. I literally didn't know what interest rates were. And I had 4 maxed out credit cards and student loans.
This is adorable.
Yeah, right. I had no, I love you, Jenn. You're so cute. You had no idea.
Yeah.
And so I literally would get paid and then I would have no money in my account. I would get paid and then I would put, a little bit on all of my credit cards. I never had money. I always just had space on credit cards.
I see.
I knew nothing about money, I literally knew nothing.
And living paycheck to paycheck.
Sometimes there was one time that it was right before I met my husband. It was the winter and my gas light came on. And my mom would always tell me growing up, being from the winter, was like, don't ever let your gas get below half a tank in the winter. It can freeze, right? So I never listened to that rule. I've always been a ride it on E and see how long you can go person.
You're so badass.
Right. I'm just, what can I say?
Such a rule breaker, Jenn.
Just,
I knew I liked you.
like, okay, Karen, you get
that. Yeah. Shout out to our moms, both named Karen.
Really named Karen.
Actually.
And I remember like my gas light came on and I said I had like 20 miles and it was like 30 miles to work. And I was like, I had no money. I had no room in my credit cards. I had no money in my account. And I was like scraping like quarters around my house to like go put $5 in my gas tank. Like that was my reality with money. So when somebody was like, hey, I want to pay you to work with me. I mean, I had no idea what to do. And I was like, okay, well, let me think about it. Like, let me just think on this. And then I went home and asked Pat and he's like, I don't know. Like, what are you asking me for?
That's what Google's for.
Right. And so I literally was charging $180 for 3 months of coaching.
$180 for 3 months of coaching.
And they could text me whenever they wanted. They got like custom plans. We talked once a week.
I can't even go to the grocery store and walk out unscathed with less than that.
No.
I'm like, I'm just going to go buy a banana. And they're like, that'll be $367, please.
I'm like, wow, how'd that happen?
How did all this ice cream get in my cart?
There was new dark chocolate. I had to try every flavor.
It's not for me.
Oh yeah. So I knew my worth, like nothing, right?
Yeah.
I had no idea. And then that's when I started to really, like, I realized that entrepreneurship was a thing. I met a friend. I asked her what she did for a living and she said she was an entrepreneur. I didn't know what that was. So I got in the car after I met her and I literally Googled entrepreneur. Yes. But I couldn't spell it.
But did you spell it right is what I was going to.
I ended up having to just be like, hey Siri, what's an entrepreneur?
Entrepreneur.
No, literally it was like ONTRA.
Entree. Is this a French word?
I literally had no idea what an entrepreneur was.
Again, adorable Jenn.
Right. I was like, I love younger Jenn. Yeah. I literally love her so much.
Too.
Like she's just so
very sweet,
naive, and just she's like, whatever, I'm here for the ride. Let's do it. So like I had no idea this world existed. I'm from the Midwest. Like nobody that I knew was doing anything outside of the matrix, outside of just you go to work, you do this and you put money toward your retirement and you climb up a ladder and that's it. I had no idea. So this whole time I'm getting other degrees and then I discovered this world of entrepreneurship and I started to follow people on social media and I was like, oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is a thing. And you guys are living like a cool life and you're traveling and you have freedom. And like freedom to me, like that wasn't even a thing. Cause even in the summer, I was still nannying and working as a tutor.
Right.
So I was like, freedom, what in the world? But I saw this world that was possible because you were helping people. And it just shattered all like when you help people, you can't be successful when you,
right? That's a big one. Yeah. Like the martyr.
Yes.
I still see that a lot in even, in the spiritual circles is like, well, just giving of ourselves into the point where we're completely energetically depleted. And I'm actually thinking of you in the gym, like not working out and then just like helping people all the time. And I'm seeing parts of myself in that journey and wondering at some point, did you just get so inundated with people who actually wanted your help that you had to start to learn how to set different boundaries?
Well, I saw what was possible and I wanted to hire a coach to help me because I was like, I'm not going to do this story. It's my whole life. I'm like, if I need help, I'll just go get it. Right. And I'm going to figure out a way to make it work. Right. My master's degree, like I didn't have money. I had loans like crazy. And I was like, I'm just going to figure out I've always just figured out a way to make it work.
This is another thing I want to underscore about you and your personal journey. And I think it's really common to a lot of the people that I have on the show you have not had an easy walk. You're telling us your story right now, but one of the cornerstones of your personality is I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give up. And I believe I have that. I know I have that trait too, even though sometimes my journey has taken me into deep, dark, depressive, anxious thought loops where I'm in that space of self-hatred and all of that. but I can't stay there. I choose not to stay there
Yeah.
because if I really let myself stay there and use the circumstance, use the environment as the excuse, then I am choosing to live the rest of my life feeling the feelings, embodying feelings that don't feel so pleasant. So I say this not as a light and love and spiritual bypass of like, just choose a better life, because that's not real. And sometimes we don't have the resources that we need. And that's why in my life, at least, so many, I call them angels, but people who have come in and touched me in these choice moments, or given me a gift, or shown me how I was worthy in a way that maybe in that moment I couldn't even fully receive. But those moments have been forks in the road where I was presented with an option. I was paying attention enough to say, okay, which story do I want to choose? The undeserving or the deserving story? And I hear this theme in your story over and over again. You had plenty of things to complain about. And yet you were just like, all right, I don't know how to do this. I'm going to hire a coach who knows how to do this. And I'm going to figure out how to pay for it. And I love that. So
and those were there too. You know, there were so many different parts of my journey where it was like that downward spiral of depression and who the hell am I and why am I doing this? And am I crazy? Because I literally knew no one else doing it. Right. And so there were so many parts of my journey that was a choice. Right. Where I was like, we could go there. And it's like, I always let myself feel them, but I was like, we always have the choice to do something about it, you know? And that was just always like, you have the choice to do something about this. Like, feel it and go through it. Like, we're done with the compartmentalization that we've done in our lives, like, and learn something from this so that you can carry this on, you know, like you can take this piece of wisdom and carry this on. Like those times and those moments happen. I really believe everything happens for us. And so like that happens for you to experience something, to shift something, to let go of something, to release something, to heal something, to cut a cord, whatever it is, so that you can move forward toward what it is that you desire even stronger and help more people with it.
Right.
So even in the beginning, I was like, if I'm going to do this, like I'm going to do this, like I'm going to find a coach. And I just got myself out of credit card debt for like, you know, the 97th time. And I said I would never put myself back in credit card debt. I was like, I'm never going to use them. I'm just going to close these things down.
I'm never going to use these, but I'm not going to cut them up. I'll just put them in this drawer over here.
Just put them in this part of my wallet, you know, just in case.
Yeah.
And so I found a coach and I ended up hiring, I remember he told me it was $8,000 for like this 9-month experience. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
Ooh, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? And people were asking to work with me, all this stuff. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, I just checked in with myself. I was like, all right, I'm doing it, whatever.
So $8,000 for a 9-month experience. And at this point, your salary is, you're a student.
I'm a student and I'm also working full-time and tutoring full-time. And so at this point, I'm probably making $42,000 a year.
That's a big chunk of your income.
That's a huge chunk of my income.
I also want to say that too, because I'm willing to bet that in your line of work, this occasionally happens, maybe not so much anymore because of, I just feel that where you're resonating, you're probably attracting less of this energy. And I know I am as well. But in the beginning of my coaching journey, people would get offended. Yeah. And it doesn't matter. I mean, in the beginning, when I just was figuring it out, I was charging less and some people were offended. Some people were happy to pay it. Now, obviously, as my life has changed, that's adjusted accordingly.
For sure.
And people don't really get offended anymore because that's what people who want to do this work really want to do it. And it's a self-initiation and it's part of dropping the victim story as well. Yeah. And I deeply had this. So this is the reason why I can speak to this and then I really want to go back to your story. But with my first coach that I hired, I was in a similar position. I had just started podcasting. People were saying, hey, well, can you coach me? And I was like, well, I guess I could. I mean, I have a psychology degree. I could have this teaching degree, but I didn't really know how in the business sense. And I hired a coach or I wanted to hire this one particular coach who I saw I liked the way she was presenting herself online with integrity. I looked at her as a spiritual person, but also this badass business person. And I had all this guilt around the martyrdom, right? Just wanting to help people for free because we're all one, right? And so these are my gifts. I should just give of them unconditionally. And I was really kind of stuck in that. But what's really important is when we're talking about being all one and we're talking about loving everyone, we must not forget to include ourselves in that. And it's really difficult to thrive and be in a creative space or be in self-actualization. If we look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right at the bottom, you have all these basic safety and security needs and shelter and being food and clothing. And then at the top is self-actualization. It's where our creativity and where we can start to really deepen our spiritual life. That can't happen if you're triggered, you're in fight or flight, you're in scarcity. So this is like one of those yes and moments for me where, yes, I desire to make my work accessible and I will find ways to do that. It might not be the one-on-one coaching though. Yeah. The accessibility might come through things like this, like a free podcast offering, and to really let go of any, shame about what we need to create the life that allows us to be our best self. So this coach was like, it's $5,000 for 4 calls. And I think I had $5,000 to my name. Wow. And I was paying the podcast team, and the $5,000 wasn't even mine. It was on loan from a friend. I had no income coming in, and it had been that way for a couple of years. And I was terrified.
Right.
And she told me the price at the end of the call, and I had been so excited, and my energy completely fell flat. I told her, I was like, oh, I got to think about it. And she's like, great, take your time and I'll circle back around with you in 2 days. And I felt this grief welling up in my chest and in my throat. I went down to the docks. I was staying at my parents' property, the retreat center in Canada. And I went down to the docks and I looked at the water and I just sobbed. And I was just like, why are all the coaches that I want to work with so expensive? There's all these other coaches out there, but I feel like I already know what they're teaching. And I was just mad. I was just like, why am I in this position? And then I came to awareness and I thought, wait a minute, you have this money in your account. What are you really afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that I'll pay for this and it won't work. Yeah. Or I won't show up for it and I'll have made a stupid decision. Yeah. And I just decided in that moment, I wasn't going to let it be a stupid decision. I was going to show up in a way that it had to transmute what I was in. And so I didn't wait 48 hours. The next hour I texted her and I said, where can I pay in full? I'm terrified. I want to do this. Here's what my needs are. Here's the kinds of things I don't really want to learn about. Yeah. And here's what I really need. And she was like, thanks for your clarity. And then the next week she really encouraged me. We had 1 call. And then she's like, just put out your coaching offering on Instagram. And I was like, okay. So I just got on my Instagram story kind of awkwardly and said, hey guys, so I'm going to give away some free calls. I'm going to give away 5 free calls if you want that, DM me. Cause I wanted to practice. Yeah. And I think that week I had way more than 5. I think I ended up doing 10 calls. Wow. And out of those 10 people, 5 of them paid for coaching packages. I think I had signed like $19,000 in my first week of trying anything like this. Yeah. And I arbitrarily picked numbers with my coach. I didn't really know anything about the industry. And it blew my mind open because any coaching I had done before that was like, I don't know, like you charge a therapist is like $60, $100, $150. So I'll charge $111 an hour. And I would do one of these calls and I was like, this is never going to amount to anything. Yeah. So, really changing my paradigm around like working hourly versus these packages, because it's not, the time that we spend together in that hour is really not what you're paying for. No. And you know this. Yeah. It's our life experience. Yes. It's the thousands of books that I've read and assimilated. It's the meditations that I've created that I can send you. It's being able to sense into your language to really see what's going on.
Yeah.
So nobody taught me about that.
Mm-hmm.
And until I met this coach and initiated myself into an abundance mindset. And that first week when all that money came in, I remember actually feeling really strange and hollow. And I cried because I wanted to buy myself something to celebrate.
Right.
And I was wearing kind of old clothes. Like
Yeah.
all my stuff was just like, I would get really upset if something would break because I couldn't replace it. I was stressed all the time and I couldn't relax or let things go.
Yeah.
I really wasn't in my feminine a lot at all. Because I had been similar to you, parents divorced, very independent from a young age, moved out at 17. And this was completely new. And so I was like, I want to buy myself something. And Jen, I couldn't think of anything that I wanted because I had shut down that desire part of me so deeply. And I just curled in a ball and I just hugged myself. And I was like, it's okay, sweetheart. You know, that can come back now. And so this is my little vignette that feels like a parallel to your story in some ways about hiring your first coach.
Oh my gosh, I love that story. And it's so true, right? Because often we think that money's going to give us something that's outside of us. And then it just amplifies what's in us. And then you're like, I have no desires. I don't know what I want to do. Like,
oh, put it back. Cool. Like the Pandora's box. Yes. You just like can't close the lid.
literally. And that's a part of the journey.
Yeah.
You know, because when I hired that first coach, well, so the funny part is I was terrified to tell my husband. We've always kept things very separate financially. And I was terrified to tell him. So I didn't tell him for 3 months that I hired a coach and that I was the reason I told him 3 months later is because this coach was hosting a retreat that I was invited to as a part of the package. And I was like, oh, Pat, I hired a coach and he has this retreat. Like he had because I was terrified to tell him.
So you were just like doing these calls in private?
Oh, he had no idea. Oh, he had no clue.
Wow. Do you think that was like...
It was my shame. That it's so funny because he's never expressed, we're so, you know us, we're so like, you be independent, live your life, I'll do that. And we like our relationship, right, is
it's a lot of
the
freedom.
Result of that, a ton of freedom. And we've always valued that. And so I knew that I had that freedom, but I think I was just like, wow, this is a lot of money. This is like more than you're paying in this, like for these classes for your master's degree. Like, what are you, like there was some of that shame within me that
you were scared and judging yourself. And so we 100%. Project that another person is going to be like, what are you doing? Because we're like, what are you doing?
Yes. And like when I told him, he was like so happy for me. He was like over the moon. But when I worked with this coach, he told me what I should be charging. He's like, this is what the industry is charging. And I got off the first call with him and I wanted to throw up everywhere because and I quickly realized that it wasn't, yes, coaching's going to change my life. And I've worked with coaches ever since, but this was an inner game. And if he tells me this is what I have to charge and my body is like constricting and I want to throw up because you're telling me that I should charge $400 a month, like this is a me game. So in that immediate moment, I was like, went online and I ordered, some money books and I just started to dive into
which ones?
Secrets of the Millionaire Mind was the one. I read it 8 times within my first year of being an entrepreneur.
Have you read Think and Grow Rich?
I haven't.
Oh, that's a classic.
I know. Pat got it for me and I never was drawn to it.
Mm-hmm. And my other favorite money book, it's an oldie, but a goodie, is The Richest Man in Babylon.
Oh,
it's told in like little story vignettes. It's really good. Okay. So what is it? The Millionaire?
Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. I read it truly 8 times over in a year. And amazing. I just kept going back because it's all about the way that we're conditioned with money.
Right.
And I just quickly realized that I wanted to be an entrepreneur to help people, but to live a life of freedom and to I saw what was possible. And I truly believe that if anyone else can do it, I would listen to people's stories and I would find myself in their stories. And I was like, well, if they've done it, then I could do it. Like they're no different. They just have been doing it longer. They didn't give up despite fear. And they were always dedicated to doing the real work, right? The inner work. And so I just kept seeing people and I just knew that it was an inside game. So from the very beginning and in that moment, I told my husband, I said, this is my last school year. I'm not going back to school after June. I'm done and I'm going to be successful. This is what it's going to be. And I knew what I desired that year and I blew that desire out of the water. And then I just left my whole entire career and my dreams to be a principal. I just left it all behind.
How many years ago was that?
That was at middle of 2019.
Wow. So not that long ago.
Not that long ago.
Okay. So middle of 2019, you start coaching.
October 2018 is when I hired that coach.
Okay. When did you actually start like taking on clients, would you say? Around the same time?
Around the same time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so then you set a goal. I'm assuming it was a financial goal.
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to share that first year?
Yes. I said, if I could match my salary, which was at that point $55,000. If I could match my salary, then I will easily leave. And by the end of the school year, when I left, I was making $12,000 a month in that coaching business.
Wow.
Yep. I was just like, let's go. Let's go. Let's do it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So people are sitting here nodding their heads, including myself, asking how.
Yep. So worked with this coach, and at that point in time in my business, I knew nothing about alignment, feminine energetics, nothing. So I literally was just like, this is what he's telling me to do. I'm just going to do it. Like, that's how it was. And I also I always knew that I had a different approach to the nutrition. This was all nutrition. I had a different approach. I didn't want to teach people how to lose weight. I wanted to teach people how to actually overcome and really be in their power. Like, I always was drawn to helping women with just overcoming themselves and really, truly, when you're in your power, losing weight isn't a big deal. You can just do it, because we're not trying to cut break habits. We're literally becoming a different version of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So much of my work, he was like, focus on this and produce content on this. And I was like, I'll do that. And one of my core pillars is changing who we are from the inside out, because that was my whole entire journey. So that whole, he was posting on social media, doing these sales calls, now such misalignment now. But at the time I was just like, okay, I'm going to lead on social media. I'm going to create this brand, and this is what it is that I stand for. I'm going to, here's my system of talking to people, sales calls, whatever it was. And then that was just my goal, is help as many people as I could help.
So at $200.
So then I did increase my price from there.
Yeah.
So then I was starting off 200, and then it was okay, I had two different packages, 200, 500, or 200, 400. And then it was okay, let's do 250, 450. And then it was 300, 500. And so I had two different packages, and it was just monthly, and they had to have a certain month commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was ridiculous, because that was the only way that I had to work with people, was one-on-one.
Right.
So at the end of teaching, I was working with, before I blew that, really shifted that business, I was working at one point in time, 50 people one-on-one.
I was going to say, to hit that $12,000 a month at a low, lower cost. You were really hustling.
I was hustling.
You were hustling.
The first year was a lot of hustle.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
As it is.
Yep.
And then after that, so you matched your salary, you decided to leave.
Yep.
Now we're getting into the year 2020.
Yep. We're end of 2019, beginning of 2020. So in this whole process, I was in other programs. I've always invested in myself. I've always been in masterminds and programs, and just I didn't have anyone in my life that did what I did. And so it was important for me to find those people. So I was always reinvesting in myself. That's always been really important for me, just continuously learning and growing. So in all of these masterminds, I was part of all of these programs that I was taking for myself, people always needed help. And I was always helping people with money and their relationship with money and their business. And to the point where three of my business coaches my first three business coaches that I had were when are you going to start doing this? You were not born to be a nutritionist. You're born for all of this. When are you going to start doing it? And I would just always tell them it's important to me that if I'm going to shift into business and money, that I am so strong in it, and that I have a business that I love before I do that. Right. It was just integrity was really important to me.
Right.
So I continued on my work, continued helping people. And then in April of 2020, it was just the biggest soul, just shaking of my body that was now it's time. And so I started to do the work that I do now. It looked very different back then, in April of 2020.
So now here we are, just over 2 years after that.
Yep.
And will you tell us about your recent financial milestones that are really massive in the last 3.5 years, coming from a teacher's salary?
Yeah.
And a bunch of debt.
Yeah. And a lot of debt. last year I just had it's people asking all the time, like, do you set goals? And I don't set goals. I cast energetic projections and I work on like alignment too.
Ooh.
Right. Like I don't have goals. But right now, if you're like, what's your goal? I'm like,
my interest is peaked.
Yes, I don't set goals.
So you cast energetic, what did you have?
Projections.
Projections.
Yeah.
What's that mean?
So like last year, it was not a goal. It was like, I genuinely feel that this is going to be $1 million year.
Yes.
And so if I was going to have $1 million year, then like, who would Jenn be? What would the energy of $1 million year be? What would the energy of $83,333?
The energy of a millionaire.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Like, what would $1 million Jenn do? What would $1 million Kennedys do?
This is so Joe Dispenza stuff.
Yes. And this is actually before I even knew who Joe Dispenza was. So I was just like, okay, what would $1 million Jenn do? So all of last year, it was just the continuous alignment to what would the $1 million Jenn, how would she run her business? How would she coach? How would she mentor? How would she support? How would she teach? How would she lead? And so last year we celebrated $1 million in October.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was nearly a $1.4 million year.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
In a very short period of time.
Yeah. And what's the best thing is I said this all of last year. I said, I don't want to just celebrate $1 million. I don't want to like pop the champagne and, have the balloons for $1 million. Like I desire for $1 million to happen in complete fun and joy and alignment with me and my life's purpose and like how I desire to do this. Like my life values of space and freedom and fun and adventure, like those outweigh money any day of the week. Like the life that I live outweighs a dollar amount because I know what money is. It's an amplifier and it's only just going to add to what is.
Right.
So, all of last year, this year, it's like, what's the how behind it? Like, how am I running this business? How am I leading people? How am I teaching people? Like, how is my life? Like, what's my relationship like? Right. I want everything to be so amazing, like live the richest life possible. And then the money is like the cherry on top. But life is so freaking rich already. It's so amazing already that the money just gets to amplify how amazing life already is.
I think this is really important too, because perhaps some people listening to this are thinking, well, yeah, that's easy for you to say life's really rich when you're not living in poverty or scarcity, or you're trying to put a roof over your head, or you have all these dependents. And so I anticipate this question, and I watched myself grow out of this, but it's like how does one get in touch with the richness of life when everything in their external environment is trying to pull them into that emotionally addictive cycle of feeling like a victim to circumstance?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, and this can be a hard realization, right, is that we create our reality. And so when I was in all that debt and when I was in all of that struggle, like I was internally creating it because that's all that I knew. I only knew debt. I only knew struggle. I only knew like feeling helpless with money. That's all that I knew. And so that's how I was programmed internally. And so that's what I was seeing externally. And until I decided that I was going to reprogram it internally, I couldn't see it externally. Right. That was, I had to start with me. Our internal world reflects, our outside reality.
Right.
And so within all of that journey and all of those times, like I still felt so rich, not with money, but in other areas of my life.
Yes.
Right. Like I remember Pat and I, the first like 4 months we dated, we didn't even go out to eat because we couldn't afford to go out to eat.
Right.
So we were just cooking and having dinner on the back patio. And instead of going on vacations that everyone else was going on, our friends were going to Barcelona and Spain and Greece. Like we couldn't go on those trips, but like we made our life a vacation. We woke up every single day and did things that brought us love and joy.
Yes.
So
like you were grateful for what you had.
So much gratitude.
And you put as much of your attention and energy on expanding the gratitude for what you have and practicing embodying, feeling more of it. Is that right?
And then also with that, like I said earlier, like I saw what was possible in other people. And I've always been obsessed with just like listening to people's stories because I always would just find myself in those stories. And I was like, okay, so if they did that and they are a millionaire or they make whatever it is, or they have this lifestyle, and I would listen to their story, I'm like, well, I've literally been there, or I've been worse than there.
Totally.
So like, if they can do it, I can do it. So instead of like, let me study the human.
Right.
Let me study like the way that they've shifted and what they believe in and how they think and how they act and how their day goes. Like, let me study you
Yeah.
and how you've been able to overcome those things.
You stayed curious.
I stayed so curious.
This reminds me of when they'll have a set of like identical twins.
Yeah.
And they're raised in the same family environment. And, you know, one grows up to become an addict because they were mimicking the parent, and the other initiates themselves into something that's like helping people who are children of addicts or whatever. It's like, well, how does that happen?
Mm-hmm.
How do these forks in the road with two people that have identical DNA, how does that happen? And I'm thinking about you, looking at other people saying, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I see where a lot of people get stuck is that they look at other people and they say, well, that's them because they could do that because of this. And they list all the reasons without even really knowing the person or the circumstance. So what is the secret? If someone's feeling really stuck, feeling like I can't do that, what advice would you have for them?
Mm-hmm. Well, from very, very, very early on, I heard this quote. I have no idea where it came from, but it's if the vision is in you, it's for you. Like if the dream is in you, it's for you. So we often have a crossroad within us, right? A crossroad of the way that it's been, which is so comforting, even though it can be like it can suck. It's so comforting because we've always known it. And then the vision that we have within us. And I really think, you know, God, source, universe, whatever we want to, you know, whatever feels good to you to call it, puts these visions, gives us these visions for us to see what's really possible for us. And we get to make that choice of like, if that vision is in me, then it really is for me. And all of this is for me to help get there. Like I remember during my eating disorder, I mean, no spiritual awakening, no concept of anything. I was in college. And I remembered like crying myself to sleep. And there was just this little ping, like couldn't even call it a voice. It was a voice in my head. It was just this ping that was like, this is going to help people one day. And I was like in the deepest part of it. And I was bawling my eyes out and like, why do I struggle with this? Why does nobody else? And it was just like, this is going to help people someday. And it was just like those little nudges, right? You called them angels, right? Those little nudges, those little voices that it's like, when we start to give our attention to those little nudges and those little voices and those little experiences, then it's like, oh, wait, that's a breadcrumb, right? Like I think about why CrossFit. I couldn't afford anything, but this CrossFit gym had this Groupon. It was like $50 a month for 6 months, this Groupon. And it was like, well, I've always wanted to try something like this. Okay. Like, why was I on Groupon at that day, at that time that I saw this, where it found me my strength? I met my husband there, right? Like it's like, okay, well, that was just a breadcrumb. So it's like, when we open our eyes and focus more on the breadcrumbs and more on those dreams and the possibilities, and we really just truly know, as hard as this is right now, as much as this just sucks so much, there is possibility. And this is going to be a part of my story.
Yes. Maintaining that hope is so critical.
Yeah.
And when I was listening to you talk about casting energetic projections and not the arbitrary amount of making $1 million, because that's just a thought form. That's a mental process that exists on this mental plane. It doesn't really mean anything. But when we think about $1 million, what are we really talking about? We're talking about freedom.
Right.
We're talking about our sovereignty, that feeling of walking into a store and being able to purchase whatever you like. That's a feeling. I'm sure even as people are listening to this, as I'm listening to my own voice, I'm experiencing that power, an embodied sense of what it feels like to go and know that I can book a flight anywhere in the world today if I need to.
Yeah.
That was not always my experience. And so the reason I believe that, you know, you were able to reach $1 million is because you believed it was also possible. So there's the idea of casting that energetic projection and then sort of releasing or relaxing your attention around it, like relaxing into the experience and trusting, yes, this is going to happen if I continue to align with it and pay attention to it and just kind of track it over there in the background. Now, sometimes I've seen this backfire, at least on myself, as I was learning about manifestation and all this, choosing something that feels really far outside of the scope, thinking that, oh, this is what I'm choosing to align to. But secretly, my brain was creating all these thoughts of like, you're not going to reach that.
Yeah.
That's a little bit too high. Da, 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 da. So what I did when I first started doing this, I'm going to shout out to Esther and Jerry Hicks and the work of Abraham and the law of attraction stuff, money and the law of attraction. That's a great one. And this idea of reaching for a slightly better feeling thought.
Yes.
Right. So when I was renting out my apartment in New York City, sleeping in friends' beds, like, I'll water your plants, I'll watch your pets, like whatever I had to do. The idea of having money or paying off my credit cards or even being able to buy my train card next week felt like a stretch. So if I was trying to even embody what it felt like to be able to book flights whenever I wanted, that was not something that was even within my realm of being able to access in an embodied, energetic sense.
For sure.
So what I did is I scaffolded my way up there by choosing things that I knew could be realistic feelings for me. And what that looked like, as silly as this is, we were talking about one of my dear friends, Chelsea, who was just here for the birthday and the podcast celebration. When I was living in New York, Chelsea would bail me out all the time. I told you stories of her putting me into cabs when I was too drunk to walk and didn't know what I was doing. And I felt so much guilt because I couldn't really pay her back. And so it was like, I never even really brought it up. And what I wanted was to be able to take my friend out to lunch and throw down my credit card and say, I got it. And watch her face light up and feel the feelings inside of me of like, oh, that feels so good to treat her. Simply, Jen, that was my 5-minute meditation every day, was a vision of me paying for my beloved friends' lunches. That was it. And stuff started to change.
Yes.
It was incredible.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And that was definitely it along the way. I remember when I first became an entrepreneur, and it was like, just million just sounded, I was like, oh, a millionaire. That sounds cool. Right. Yeah. Like I'm like the first one in my family to go to college, you know, I'm like, whoa, that would be big. But like my body could not conceptually understand or feel anything for $1 million. It honestly felt like a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
I was like 10 years, $1 million will be good.
Yeah.
So the first year it was like, okay, what can you get excited about? What can you feel good? And it was like 6 figures. Okay.
Great.
The next year it was like, I honestly feel like like $500,000 could happen this year. Like, okay, let's align with that. And then it was the $1 million, right?
What can you get excited
like
about?
What is your body like? Okay, that's kind of crazy. That kind of feels crazy, but like, yes, I'm here for it.
Scares the shit out of me, but also it could happen.
Because that's the thing, right? Our whole body has to feel it and we have to be able to align to it. Right. And at first it was like paying off my debt was like number one.
Yeah.
And then it was paying off my husband's debt. And then it was, okay, how cool would it be if we could travel? Yeah. Like we never traveled. It was like, how cool would it be? Like, if we could just go on a trip together.
And now you guys are everywhere.
Oh my! Now we travel.
They're back in Costa Rica again.
Now I'm like, we're going to Sedona on Friday.
Amazing.
Like, yeah, but that was it at first. Like, what if we could just like travel? Yeah. And so it was like when I left my career as a teacher, we booked a flight to California and did a little road trip around California for a week and just like traveled. And then it was like, okay, well, what if you left your job, Pat? Right. And what if you didn't need to travel? Like you travel for work 7 months out of the year and we could actually do life together. Aww. And then it was like, wait a second, what if we lived in an RV and went everywhere?
Got really exciting.
That got really exciting.
And then that just fueled it more.
Yes.
Because you're allowing yourself to dream.
Yes. Yeah. And there's always been that like, it's not the $1 million, right? It's like, what would life be? You know, now it's like I got my whole family, like two of the three people on my team are my family besides my husband. Wow. So I was like, well, what if my family could work for me? Oh. And then what if I could just text my dad and be like, do you want to come down? Like flights on me. Yeah. You know, and like we started to align with just a different life that we always dreamed of.
Wow. This is so incredible. And one statement that I'm pulling from this that I just want to keep repeating is what can you get excited about?
Yeah.
It's, to me, it's this energy of, what are you flirting with?
Yes.
You know, when you're flirting and it's just this kind of coy energy and you're like a little nervous, you're like, I don't want to say too much.
Yeah, but it's
but
like really
also
fun.
this is like
Let
terrifying me
do
in a
it.
delightful way. It's that. It's like, what is the
Yeah.
energy that you're flirting with? What can you get excited about or allow yourself to get excited about right now?
Yes.
Start there and then start by expanding it a little bit at a time every day.
Yes. Yes. And get your whole body into it.
Get your whole body into it. And so I'll ask you about that too. I've seen a little bit online of some of your daily practices, your how you've ritualized getting into your body.
Yeah.
And I'd love if you can give us maybe like a little teaser. I know you lead a lot of programs, so we'll put all that information in the show notes so people can learn about your wealth and abundance programs. But what could people use right now? Maybe a tool, if you want to guide us through something a little bit to get into their bodies and really start dialing in this idea of embodied wealth.
I love this question. And honestly, it looks different every day. So I've always been, like we've joked about it, like a little bit of a rebel. Like you tell me to do something, I'm like, right? Like I'm just an Enneagram 8. I just, like the challenge, whatever.
Oh, those Enneagram 8s. I'm just kidding. I'm not well versed.
It's like the challenger. Like I just am like,
sweet.
Yeah, just like you tell me, I'm like, oh, I'll do this a different way.
Yeah.
So I've never been one for like routine every single day. It feels restrictive for me. And I know some people thrive in it and I love it. Pat thrives. I don't. And so for me, like when I wake up, so before I open my eyes every single morning, we've got a nice little morning. The only really morning ritual that we have is that I sleep until my body wakes up. And then my husband is a saint and brings me tea in bed. And I just like stay in bed for like an hour. Yep. It's just like,
shout out to Pat.
Shout out to Pat.
Yes.
And so before I open my eyes, like before I even, peek open my eyes, I keep them closed. And I literally fill my body with every single thing that I'm grateful for. And this is like money is like the last thing on the list. I'm grateful for the fact that I've got one dog sleeping between my legs and I've got the other one next to my arm. I'm grateful for this home. I'm grateful for my bed. I'm grateful for my husband that I hear making tea. I'm grateful for my community, right? And I literally like anything that comes up, it's like a wave of gratitude. But the thing with this is that like I literally feel first thing in the morning, I'm waking up with this immense like feeling of just, I'm so in love with every single part of my life and every single human in it.
Yes.
And I just like, it's like, I'm like getting hot thinking. It's just like this
you practice
wave
it
before my eyes open. And like
before
my husband could be
open.
There with my tea and I'm like, I'm not going to open my eyes yet.
Wow. That is discipline.
Yes.
You can't even tell me you don't do something every day. I'm not a discipline. I mean, I'd probably like open my eyes and be like, oh shit.
Yeah, close them.
Oh my God. Now I'm like thinking about things on the ceiling that need to be fixed or, and it happens. And I've gone through periods of my life where Danny and I have shared over this, where you open your eyes and that feeling of existential dread drops upon you like an iron curtain.
Literally.
And there's the to-do list starts ticking across
like
the brain.
Anxiety immediately. You grab your phone.
You grab your phone.
Today?
This is why I sleep with my phone on airplane mode until I'm ready to greet it, because it's like those first few minutes are so important. They dictate how we're going to feel.
Literally.
For the rest of the day.
We don't realize how important it is.
So you do these gratitudes.
Yep. Before I even open my eyes. And most days I sleep with my phone actually like in my bathroom.
Yep.
And so I don't even have it as an option. Because let's be honest, if it's an option, we're going to roll over and touch it.
Exactly.
That thing is created to be highly, highly addictive.
Yes.
And so, before I even open my eyes. And so I'm just feeling it all. And then I open my eyes and, obviously my husband's typically there. My window that I overlook, our trees and everything outside, the dogs. And then I ask myself the question, what do I need and desire for like my highest self to really live today? And so sometimes I won't get out of bed for hours and I'll pop in a meditation, put a meditation in my ear and just like do my journal's right there and I do everything in bed.
Wow.
Sometimes I get up and I take the dogs for a walk. Sometimes I get up and I sit on the back patio and drop in with Hape and just literally watch my birds.
Right.
Like,
what are you doing, honey? Just watching my birds.
Well, it's funny is we're both addicted to watching the birds now. They're like in the morning, there's so many birds at our feeders. Sometimes I go right upstairs and I go into a meditation. I pull cards. I light, my sage and Palo Santo and I'm just up there connecting.
So do you have general to-do lists though of like things that you're wanting to get done? How do you manage that? Because I know for myself, if I have things to do that day, I also have space that I've created to bop around a little bit.
Right.
But sometimes it's like, well, but you have those things to do,
For
right?
sure. Which is a beautiful practice of how present we can be in our present moment, knowing that like we've got time later. So nothing gets on my calendar before 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Like it's like
same.
It's got to be like an emergency if I was going to do something before that time.
Yeah.
So like I know that I have till then.
Yeah.
And most days it's honestly like 12 or 1 that I have something.
Yeah.
So I've got space to go to the gym if I want. I've got space to go to, Sun Life, whatever, if I want. And then I know that at this time, then I'm going to work.
Right.
Right. And like when I work, like I don't mess around with getting distracted. I used to be like scrolling on my phone and then try to do this and scroll on my phone. I have like potent work time.
Yes.
Like I don't want to be working 8 hours a day or 4.
Right.
Like I want, like when I work, it's potent and I'm like all there. And then when I'm done with my work, I get to go do whatever it is that I desire.
Yes.
Like a lot of space.
And that's part of also, do you think breaking that cycle of addiction of being busy?
Yeah.
Because the procrastination for me was so a part of that, just suffering and struggling of, oh my gosh, there's this thing I have to do. I still do it sometimes when I was going to say when I have to, but when I'm choosing to record the intros for this show, my team, it's like a running joke because it's just like the very last minute thing that I do. And it's really a practice of that presence that you were talking about. Just whatever we're doing, we can use the breath and we can come right back and just be in enjoyment of the thing just for a short period of time.
Yes.
Whatever it is, fully there.
Fully there. So within those mornings before I get to work, I typically do have I'll do some sort of meditation. Sometimes it's a long Dr. Joe one. It's like an hour. Sometimes it's like a 15-minute one, or sometimes I just put music on and I'm just going through meditation myself. But a piece of typically every morning, I'm doing visualization work of what it is that I'm like, whatever it is that I'm energetically projecting out into the quantum field. I'm doing work to align with that possibility and making that just more ingrained within my subconscious mind, my conscious mind, and my body. So let's say that it's, aligning to, I'm selling something at 20 women, right? Whatever that is, like I'm getting myself in the space of leading these 20 women, of feeling these 20 women, of these 20 women shifting, right?
Yes.
If last year I was like, they had this like vision in my mind of what was going to happen when I celebrated $1 million. Newsflash, it was way better than anything I ever could have imagined, right? But like putting that in my mind, it's like Dr. Joe, right? Where we're feeling the feelings of it already happening. We're experiencing it as it's already happening. But the biggest thing is not thinking that it's outside of you, knowing that it's in you, and your only job is to align to that. Like your only job is to live that out.
Talk to me about people who have a difficult time allowing themselves to get excited.
Yeah.
Because life has just handed them a series of sucker punches to the gut. And much like myself, when I couldn't figure out what I desired, because I was so disembodied and dissociated from my desire, from multiple years of disappointment and people and things not following through. What do you tell people who are really genuinely not able to access what you're saying when you're talking about feeling the feeling before it happens?
Yeah, that was so much of my work because people would say that like, well, feel the feelings of it being exciting.
And you'd be like,
I'm not even excited about like the day today. Like I haven't been excited.
I don't want to open my eyes.
Yes.
Like I'm having a hard time being here on planet Earth.
Literally.
What do you mean? This feels so fake. This feels so false.
Right.
Okay. The fake it till you make it thing. Like, am I just bypassing all my feelings?
Yes.
This whole question.
Right. And that was so much of my work was like, I couldn't get excited about it. And I realized that there was, very layered, as you know, very, very layered. But a piece of it was me not wanting to disappoint myself because I had been disappointed by people my whole entire life. I really couldn't rely on a lot of people. And the only person I could rely on was myself. And I always let myself down, like I was like, I'm not going to black out tonight. And then I was like the next morning, like, God, again, or I'm not going to overeat again, or I'm going to go wake up and go to the gym, whatever it is. Like I never kept promises to myself. Right.
So if you just don't promise anything, then you don't have to fail.
Right.
Wow.
So like, I'm not going to get excited about that because what if I let myself down, or what if somebody doesn't show up, or what if, right?
Yeah, life has taught me these things don't work out. So let me not put all my hopes into this basket.
Yeah. So let me just live in a world of neutrality where like whatever happens, happens, and I'll just be happy no matter what, which was so much of my adult life. Whatever happens, happens. I'll just be grateful for where I am, that's fine. But think about the vibes that you're sending out to the universe when you're in a state of neutrality. When you're in a state of just like, no, I don't want anything too big because I don't want to let myself down. You can't manifest abundance when you're living in a space of not wanting to be disappointed,
Yeah. And neutrality, it's arguable that it isn't actually even neutral. Like it really is fear-based. I was laughing about this the other day because Danny and I were trying to decide on something and we were both neutral.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, well, I don't know. What do you want to do? Well, I'm good to do either. Yeah, me too. So what do you want to do? And it was hilarious because we rarely get into things like this, but we were looping for like a couple hours deciding. And what was going on, we figured out is, it was like, well, maybe we don't have time for that. And I know you really value your rest. So maybe we should go to bed. And we were just like managing each other by neither one of us really saying, actually, I have a preference for this. It's a slight preference.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times what happens is we're afraid that when we say the thing, well, I didn't have a strong attachment anyway. And what if I say that thing and that's not the one that they wanted to do? Then I get rejected and I don't really care so much anyway. So but it was actually feeding the lack of clarity by me not just saying, well, this is the one that I want to do. And her being able to say, okay, as that lands in my body, that's actually not, I'm realizing now, thank you for reflecting that so that I can be clear in my body. And we were just cycling it together. Yes. So there's like, the energy of neutrality is really not sneaky. Neutral. Yeah, totally.
Well, sometimes it is straight neutral, but often it is that like, I don't want to disappoint.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to be let down.
Or
Yeah. So that was so much of, I was literally working with my mentor last year where she's like, get excited, but like, what do you desire? And I was like, I don't even know what the word desire means. Like, I don't even understand what that is.
Did you go through some grief with like the recognition that you didn't know what desire was?
Oh yeah.
Like that makes me feel sad.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. And I was just went through grief, but also like really grateful and proud that I'm now in this space that I can realize that I never knew what it meant. And shift and change that versus just living that pattern on, like I'm really proud that, I never knew desire. Right. Cause I remember like Black Friday, like circling all like the toys that you wanted for Christmas in like the catalog, but also knowing when I first realized that Santa wasn't real, that I probably wasn't going to get any of these because we couldn't afford them, so I had little brief moments of desire, but it was typically very neutrality was of like, no, but if I don't have it, it's fine because I like my dolls.
Yeah.
Like I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So it was like doing a lot of that work of understanding like, well, why don't I desire anything? And why can't I be excited? Like I love life. I love people. I love hosting parties. Like I love, like there's so many of these parts of my life that I love. And when I'm in it, I love it. But why can't I be excited about it happening? Right. And how can we take this one moment that's so fun, like your birthday and your podcast celebration, right? Like instead of just waiting for the night, it's like, how can I stretch this excitement for like months before and months after? Right. So like I knew that I could be excited in the moment.
Yeah.
But wait a second. Well, why can't I give myself permission to actually experience some of that excitement now? And if I really, truly have trust and faith in all that be, then I know it's going to happen eventually. Let me not put a timeline on it, right? Because often we know, like we trust that something's going to happen, but then we're like, by Friday.
Right.
And then it's like, well, why are you putting a timeline? It's a whole nother game when we're putting a timeline on it.
Right.
So if I knew that I was going to make $1 million eventually. If it wasn't in 2021, it wasn't in time in 2021. I wasn't a match for it. But let me fall in love with the journey.
Yeah.
Like let me get excited about it now. Let me I know when I trust and I have faith it's going to happen. It's all about me aligning to it.
Yeah.
So let me just start to feel, if I can't feel excitement, then let me just feel gratitude. And then let me just feel love. And then let me just feel happiness, right? Let me just classic Abraham, go on up that scale.
Yeah.
And just honor myself in the journey of going up on the scale.
Right.
Instead of well, what's the hell's wrong with me? I can't feel excited.
Right.
It's wow, I don't have that ability right now.
Mm-hmm. And the tenderness for
wow,
that's something, we're a little out of touch with.
Yeah.
That's sweetheart, buddy,
Yeah, babe, it's okay. I got
that
you.
That has to be hard. So there's a lot of self-love.
Yeah.
And
learning to love myself has been the hardest journey of my entire life.
As it is.
Always.
And there's what I'm seeing is a connection to this fear of enabling ourselves. So oftentimes myself or with people that I work with, I'll hear, well, I can't just not set goals or let myself off the hook because then I'll never do anything. I'll never amount to anything. And there's already innate in the language gives us an indicator of how the inner voice is talking to them on a regular basis. You're not amounting to much. I need to slam you up against the locker to get you to do something because you're not doing something and something about you is wrong. The fact that you're exhausted and you're wanting to sleep all the time and you can't motivate yourself is wrong, right? Instead of the body is going through something, it's stressed out, it's healing, it's got a lot of toxins it needs to detox. We label it. We try and tell people that they should be or appear the same way
literally
all the time.
Yeah.
We tell women, we make fun of women about PMS as oh, she must be PMSing. She must be on her period, as if it's an expectation that all creatures be completely linear.
Right.
Regardless of the fact that we're connected to these natural cycles, which do have ebbs and flows and natural swells. So, I think there's an invitation here to zoom out and to soften. And some of the extremity has been what I've been sanding out of my life, this pendulating between, oh my gosh, I love myself, I'm the best, and I'm the worst. And, I can't do it. Of course, I still have days like that, but just this gentle holding of what's really going on here. This isn't you enabling you. This isn't you inflating you. Let's just be really soft and real with what's alive in the body right here.
For sure. Yeah. And we're not all meant to work the same way.
Yeah.
Right. And even if we don't have any of those things that we're going through or healing or we're tired or whatever it is, we're not all meant to work the same way. I have studied my human design so much over the past year and a half, and to learn, I'm I am not meant to work a lot. I'm literally not meant to work.
What are you?
A projector.
Projector.
Yeah. We're not meant to work more than 4 hours a day.
Sweet.
We're meant to be potent. We're meant to lead. We're meant to teach. The more that we be, the less that we do, right? I'm not meant to. And so it's we have to have trust and faith that in whatever cycle that we're going in, we still can receive what it is that we desire, right? The old paradigm and the way of living is the more that I work, the more that I do, the more successful that I am, the more that I make, the more that I. Where that's not the universal laws. That's not the energy that governs this earth.
No.
Actually, in times, the more that we work, the less that we succeed because there's such desperation in the working and such fear that if I don't do this, then I'm not going to amount to this. And so there's actually not the best energy going into that, but it is honoring and loving ourselves
ourselves.
This is what I desire. And I really do believe that I can have this. And this journey is going to look different, right? There's going to be times where I'm in a ball in my dog bed crying.
Is that your favorite space to cry? In the dog bed, curl by yourself or with the dog?
If the dog joins me,
if
then
the dog's
like,
there,
please help me.
I just need to
help me.
I just need to be in a soft, small, cuddly space.
It literally is. It's like
hold myself in the fetal
I'm like
position.
trying to look at you around. I'm like, how it's like probably like a little corner of this. It's like, it's so precious.
Your husband just unlocks the door, walks in. There's Jen just crying in the dog bed again.
He's always like, what can I bring you? Do you need me? Do you want a hug? What do you want? Because it's like this, she's got like this little Tempur-Pedic dog bed and put it from Costco,
this is
like
better
ages.
Than mine.
Literally, I'm like, and it like hugs you and you're nice and in it. You know, it's like, so it's that, like, what am I saying to myself? Am I like, pull it together. It's 2:00. You got work to do? Or like, wow, what's coming up right now? Or like, wow, I slept 12 hours. Whoa. Yeah. Instead of like, you're a piece of whatever, you're going to call yourself like, wow, my body needed 12 hours of sleep last night. Mm-hmm. And I know everything's going to get done today. And if it doesn't, like, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. But like, wow, thank you for 12 hours of rest. You know, it's like being so much more kind to ourselves and falling in love with ourselves is like, gosh, if every single human on this planet went through the journey of falling in love with themselves, what would this world be like?
Well, I think that they are. I think that's what we're seeing, and gratefully. And I feel confident saying that everybody listening to this right now is on that journey. And it's so amazing to get to share these obviously embodied pieces of wisdom with them. I had 2 nights this week where I slept 12 hours.
Yeah.
It was just in the aftermath of the party and all the people and the out of town guests and the invoices and everything that I was managing. I crashed out, and it was very necessary. Mm-hmm. And I had that feeling waking up. I was like, oh my gosh, look what time it is. And then it was just like, oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you that I've created this life with space so that I can. I remember the days when I would get up at 4:45 to take the hour and 15-minute train from Brooklyn to Manhattan to nanny for a celebrity that I used to work for. And I would whack my body out. I would crush some coffee and like a scone on the way, even though I wasn't hungry because I'd be working until 3. Wow. And then I get home at 4 or 5, and then I would do the whole thing over again. And just reminding myself and feeling the gratitude. And this is the luxury that you get when you start to create. It's a privilege that is created as well. Because now, I was walking in Barton Springs the other day, and this guy, I was walking by this guy, and he turned to me kind of like sassy and complimentary. And he's like, girl, nice abs. Like, you know, like you obviously work on those a lot. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. And then I thought, hilariously, this is the least attention I've paid to my body of any year that I've been alive. Yeah. And it also feels and looks the best to me that it's ever felt. And I went, why is that? And it's because I've created a framework around how I want to live, which is to drink high quality water, to eat a certain way, for movement to just be an integrated part of my life. I don't have rigid meal times because I don't have to. Yeah. Because when I worked, like I was saying, where I got up at a certain time, I had to put something in my body just to get through the day. Now, if I wake up and I'm not hungry, I won't eat. Or if I'm ravenous, I'll have a super protein rich breakfast. Yeah. And I eat at the weirdest times of day based on my body, because I have the luxury of slowing down enough to know and to listen. And sometimes I want to eat a plate of meat. Yeah. And then sometimes I don't want any meat for weeks. Yes. And I just get to slow down and listen. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a scientist of any sort to look at my physical vessel and go, that's a healthy person. Right. And that's been honoring things like when I need rest, not calling myself a piece of shit. Yeah. Trusting that this is part of the natural cycling, and money and wealth and abundance and alignment can also kind of come in these like gentle sort of dips and hints and whispers. And if we get caught up on the whisper and we internalize it like it's a piece of bad feedback for us, then we've lost the game. So instead it's like, oh, cool, noted. Got it. This is a piece of data. This is a data point. And we were talking about waking up with anxious thoughts. Sometimes when that happens to me and my mind starts going into this cycle of all the things, I pattern break by just saying, thanks, I'll do that. And I hear it and they'll be like, oh, you got to do this. You got to do this. And thanks, I'll do that. I don't promise when I'm going to do it. I just thank my brain for telling me about a thing that it's worried about. And I say, thanks, I'll handle that. Yeah.
Well, so when you were saying all of that, it's like our minds, we're like meaning making machines, right? Like our ego just like wants to create a meaning or an identity, right? Of like, oh, well, you're eating all, like, maybe you should be a carnivore. No, maybe you should be a vegetarian, right? Like we go to these extremes and we want to grab something to create meaning for our identity and for our ego. And so it's like, how can we just remain fully in our power, self-love, like appreciation for who it is that we are, and just see things as, like you said, data pieces. Like, okay, wow, my body's desiring a lot of meat right now. That's a data piece. Yeah, I've been a little bit more active. Maybe my muscles just mean, okay, maybe I'll take a bath tonight with magnesium, right? Like just being the conscious observer of everything that's going on, right? Like money responds to us. It literally is an energy and it responds to us. So wow, I'm going through a lull where like not a lot of money's come in. Okay. Instead of like, I'm broke, I'm and like bringing in all the fear and the doubt. I have to launch something, I have to do this. It's like, well, what's my relationship with money the past month? Let's take a look at that. Oh, there's been some fear here because I had some money go out, whatever it is, right? Like just being the conscious observer. And fully in our power, just observing things.
And in our relationships too. Like when I spend time with you, regularly, I feel better. Or at least the same. You know, when I see you. And there was this inventory that I got the blessed opportunity to take this year about the relationships that I was in and where I was spending time. And it was really uncomfortable to say to myself, when I spend time with certain individuals regularly, if not every single time, I feel more drained or
it doesn't feel
worse. I don't feel expansive when I leave that hangout or that phone call. And then there was all this guilt. And then I had to take responsibility for how I was perpetuating it by maybe not really being my honest self or keeping people in this gray zone of, well, I don't want to not be friends, but this isn't a person that I would want to open up more deeply to just because of my discernment is going off. And whatever it is, I'm not going to blame it on that person, but my body isn't feeling safe opening to them about my deeper things. So where does this relationship belong? And we don't need to go around saying that person's a bad person, this person is a bad person. It's truly just like, what is supportive? What's in alignment? And can we be honest about that? I went on a date this week and we went for a walk and it was a guy from my yoga class and it went really well. And he texted me the next day and said, can I see you tonight? And I have been thinking about this a lot. It's like, okay, feeling very neutral about the situation. But after, again, just having this lesson about neutrality, I'm like, well, there's this whole thing about if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no for now. And struggled over it because I was like, how do I send him this text? Such a sweet person and not wanting him to internalize like he did anything wrong. It's just, I've reached this point in my life where I can just tell where I'm really excited to spend my energy because I'm doing so many things I love, Jen, between the book and the podcast and having close relationships with people that I work and relate with, and then my best friendships. So it's not a judgment on this person's character. It's genuinely just the energy that I felt, and I let him know that. And I think that probably is like a strange thing to receive in today's day and age. There's a lot of games that go on in the dating space. And, he had sent me a question back like, well, was it anything that I did? I think I said, thank you so much. It was so great to spend time with you. And I'm feeling clear at this moment that I don't desire to explore a romantic connection with you. And I'm going to be so happy to see you at yoga. And he was like, oh, was it anything that I did? And I was like, no, it's just a feeling.
Yeah.
And it can be that simple. It's
literally
not anything about you. We're allowed to just say, yeah, it's just not feeling like complete alignment. And I think the more we refine this, actually, the more difficult it gets to catch where things are coming in that could take up energy that maybe would be leaking, and to really stay focused and really decide, like, what is the feeling I want to feel? Is including this relationship, this project, this thing, part of that bigger picture?
For sure. And it's so, we often look at that, right? Like as, oh gosh, it's got to be harder. I've got to put some boundaries on these friendships where these friends have been texting me 5-minute voice memos about all of their problems, and then I'm the one that has to solve them, right? Like, it's like, oh gosh, like once we start realizing it, it's like, I've got to change a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we often can feel,
because you're the helper, right?
Right.
So, so you've perpetuated that in a way, right?
100%.
This is me to a T. So I'm curious to hear how you work through that. Of course
it is.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, that was so many of my friendships were, I don't want to say one-sided, but very strong on me being the helper. And I'm a really good mentor and I'm a really good coach. And I've got a lot of good life experiences that I'm really good at helping people. And so, a mentor of mine helped me realize, she's like, how many of your friendships are you the one that you're solving everyone's problems?
Yes.
And I'm like, do you want me to count?
Yeah.
I'm like, a lot. And she's like, okay. And it feels good. I'm like, well, of course it feels good. I like leave and I like help someone. She's like, but does it really feel good to you and your energy? And I'm like, no, it's a lot.
Oof,
she's like,
that was a big one.
Right. And she's like, yeah. So like, how many of the texts that go off on your phone are something like this every day?
Yeah.
Right. And then I work with amazing clients. I work with like incredible leaders in this industry, and I help them with their business and money and their relationship with money and wealth and energetics and, living in this amazing world and being in the quantum and bring it to reality. Right. And she's like, so your clients that you work with, like, you give them a lot of energy, and they give you the financial return for the energetic exchange. And you are on Instagram leading, and you're in your programs leading. And then you have friends that you're literally just doing the same work that you're doing in your job, in your life. And these friends are supposed to like add to your life and bring sisterhood, like real true sisterhood. And sisterhood is, hey, I got this, but I know that you got me too. And I know that it's this like reciprocal relationship,
Yes.
And so it was some cleaning up of the energy and not doing it from a place of, okay, I'm kind of an asshole and I got to put a boundary here.
Right.
But doing it in a place of like, I really love myself and I value myself and I value the work that I do. And like, I love myself so much that I'm going to put a boundary here. Like, boundaries are a self-love practice.
Yes. Okay. Tell me what those first couple texts or conversations to friends were like, because that's a hard one. Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, before I started to have these conversations, I was like, who says that I have to respond to a text message within a minute or 5 or an hour? Nobody except for myself.
Or days.
Or days, right?
If you're me.
Right? Same. We've texted, we know.
My friends know. They understand.
Yes. And so it was like, you know what? I've got to release those expectations. I have to respond to something. Even if it's my family, like I don't have to respond right away. Like, I'm not going to just drop everything for this. And so it was first and foremost me getting comfortable with actually like putting my own energetic boundaries of like, okay, just because you texted me, I'm not going to respond right away.
Right.
Right. And that was just a practice for myself.
This other person just pops a notification into your sphere. It's like, even if it's lovingly intended, we have this ability to invade one another's energy in in a different way than we did before. And all of these false expectations that we should instantaneously get. I mean, read receipts. How bullshit are like read receipts on like when they made those a necessary part of Instagram or whatever.
Right.
Because all the time I'm opening stuff and then I'm marking it as unread because I can't handle it right away. Or it's just like it's not an emergency.
Yes.
And then people will message me back and be like, I'm so sorry if I said something offensive or because like, of course, all their their anxiety comes up over it, and you
100%.
don't want them to feel that, but you also don't have the time to respond. And so we kind of just need to let people go through their processes with some of
100%.
it.
Yeah. So it was a big piece of that with just like my phone in general. My phone's always on silent.
Same.
Never, ever will vibrate or anything. And I have all my notifications turned off except for phone calls.
Wow.
So like,
even texts?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
You're
like
great.
Can't even see it unless I want to.
Yep. My email's like that.
Yes. Instagram, Facebook, everything's like that. But for a couple of my friends, I just, kind of had a conversation where I was like, hey, I've noticed that like you need a lot of support and I love you. And that's that's friendship, is like that I have this support with you and for you.
Mm-hmm.
I love this. However, it's a lot right now. And I have a lot going on in my life and I'm building what it is that I'm building, that I don't have the energetic space and capacity to be one text away.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need something, shoot me a text and let's schedule a time to like go on a walk or chat or something. But like, I can't receive these messages and just help you right away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like very well received.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, if a friend texts me and they're like, hey, do you want to go on a walk? Or one of my friends was like, hey, I actually didn't even need to have this conversation with her because we have such a sisterhood, and she's always just been good with boundaries and understanding. And she messaged me last week. She's like, hey, do you have about like 20 minutes to talk? I'm going through something with my spouse.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, of course. Right. But that's always been her.
Right.
And so I think it allows other people too, right? Self-love practice for me. But I think that as women, we're so used to friendships being like, let me just text you and just complain about whatever there is to complain about.
Right.
My spouse is annoying me, my client, whatever it is. Right. And so I think it allows us as like redefining what womanhood is, right? And what friendships are, is like, why are you bringing this thing to me?
Yes.
Because like, if you're complaining, you're choosing to stay in a perpetual state of whatever it is that you're in right now.
Right.
Do you genuinely want help?
Yes.
And if so, do you want me to help you? And if you're always coming to me, let's talk about you getting a coach or a therapist.
Yeah.
Because it's not my job is to every single day help you with what's going on.
Right.
Right? Like, friendships should add to our life. They should bring joy into our lives. Like, they should expand us. We should have deep conversations and connection. It shouldn't just be, let me help you with this.
Right.
So I think it also allowed them, because that's what boundaries allow people to do, is to reflect.
Yes. And it initiates them into, or ourselves into, more self-responsibility.
Yeah.
So it's fine to want to vent, but the way that I love to receive it is when a friend is coming to me saying, hey, I'm going through something really challenging.
Yes.
Do you have some time for me to just vent? Or would you be willing to give me some advice? But like, they're already clear actually on what they're wanting from me. So I'm not floundering around and like, wait a minute, am I supposed to just be the receptacle for you negatively talking about this thing? Actually, if that's what it is, then let me make sure I have the capacity for that. And I'm energetically not trying to mentally figure out what to say to because maybe you don't even want to hear my advice. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Yes.
And let's be clear about what we're talking about here so that I can meet your expectations if that's available to me.
Yes.
And you can meet mine.
Yes.
And let's meet each other there.
Yeah. And like setting that context before. And my Pat and I actually had to go through this in our marriage when we were living in the RV, where we were together 24/7. And it was like, he would come to me with something and I would just go into like coach mode. Yeah. And he's like, whoa, why are you telling me what to do? I don't want your help. And I'm like, well, why are you telling me this? Right? Like, why, what do you,
you're preaching to the choir.
What do you want right now? You know? So we literally, after many, many, many big arguments and frustrations in our relationship, it was like, wait, let's just come to each other and just like, hey, I'm really frustrated. Can you just listen? Can you just be a sounding board? Can you just listen to this?
Yeah.
Or like, hey, I need some help. Right. And like, because we do so much life together, like setting that boundary or, setting the stage before we do it. And so it's like that with the friendships as well. Like, and I'll do that with my friends. Like, I'm really frustrated and I just need to vent. Can I just get this off? Just get this out. And like, can you see if there's anything here that I don't see? And it's like, that gets to be the communication.
Yeah.
standards in relationships.
Totally. Yeah, I'm learning how much we rob people as empaths when we overreach and we give them the thing that we're intuiting that they need, whether we're correct or incorrect, because there's so much self-responsibility and awareness that comes from having to ask. And that's, I've had that even in my own family, because we live in such a bubble of this coaching world
really
and the spiritual world. So sometimes when I'm rejoining different circles, the way that we speak in language with each other is quite foreign to my family, and it can feel sterile or it can feel woo-woo. And that's been a point of contention, because for me, it's just what works, for me.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to convert anybody else, but if that's activating, that just shows us what our preference is currently, and we don't have to force each other into speaking exactly the same way. But I've been really watching that too, is with my family, especially when they're suffering, and I can see that they're suffering, and I have something that's worked for me.
Yeah.
Just because I see it and I'm aware of it doesn't actually mean it's my responsibility
for sure
to share it or fix it for them unless they ask. So there's been this holding back, because I'm hearing the same person vent about the same thing 3, 4, 5 times. And I'm going, they're not asking me.
Yeah.
So they're not asking me. So this is a sacred law of free will.
Yes.
I'm not going to inject myself. I might offer, do you want to hear my advice on this or my thoughts on this? But if they don't take that invitation, it's not for me to force that down their throat.
Absolutely. And I think because we come in from coaching backgrounds, coaching, mentoring, helping, healing, even with people that we love, it's like, well, put me in. I know this one. Wait, I can help you with this.
Totally.
I've got this. And it's like, not unless you're invited, and you're genuinely asked. Otherwise, we do rob them.
It's the hardest with family, because they also have known us since before we were doing these things.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, wait, this is my opportunity to actually, my family doesn't maybe even know what I do fully. Right. So I got this. This will feel great for my ego too, to be able to be helpful and for them to see the ways in which I'm shining that, other people are paying me to help out. And this is my gift, and to have it not received or maybe, be misunderstood in family that's been a deep walk of mine as well.
Yeah. Family, friends, community, all of it. Right. And it's like, and if we do see something that we know that we can help, then it's like, hey, I actually specialize in this. Are you open to hearing consent. What I see?
The consent.
Yes. Are you open to hearing that?
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
Otherwise, have you ever had someone give you advice when you were just trying to vent and it feels very energetically violating, and you can feel your insides just shutting down? Like your little child is starting to pout. I start to dissociate. My eyes glaze over. I'm like, you're mansplaining to me right now. You're listening to you. And then what's the result is we feel even more loneliness and even more disconnection than we did before. So I don't want someone else to feel that when they're talking to me. So to the best of my abilities, I'm going to stay present and centered. I'm going to keep checking in with myself on the inner and keep part of my attention on them and ask them what they're needing. And sometimes also people don't know what they need. That's really hard too.
Yeah.
Where, because I've been in situations where I will ask a pointed question like, hey, what do you need from me right now?
Yeah.
And sometimes we're in so much pain that it's like, what do you mean? What do I need from you? Like, what do you're so sterile. You're so shut down. It's like, okay, let's decide what we want together. And then we can go there. But first we have to decide, and then, sometimes we want to stay stuck in our anger. We want to stay stuck in our cycles, and that's a whole nother kettle of fish. But yeah.
So true.
Mm-hmm.
So true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to what we were saying earlier with that self-awareness and that self-love.
Yeah.
Because when you are practicing and you're on that journey, then it's like, okay, hold on. Going back to the breath. Take 3 deep breaths. Okay, what do I need right now? I just need someone to freaking hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I just need to be acknowledged. Or this is a big problem and I need some help with it. Coming back home. And then it's like, well, what do I need? This is what I need right now.
And
the number of times that we can do that throughout a day, it's like, anytime that I'm feeling off, like just like irritated, frustrated, annoyed, whatever it is, I'm just like, okay, come back, take some deep breaths. Like, what is this?
What good awareness.
Yeah. It's like, I don't want to feel annoyed.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel irritated.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, come back. And even if it's like, this can be hard to do with people that we love because they'll take anything, right? Like we can be with a spouse or a family member, typically not friends, but a spouse and family member. And we can just like, we can unleash, right? Like I'm just like whatever it is. And so it's like, it's harder to do with them because they'll actually receive it. Where like a friend would be like, excuse me.
You're right.
What is that?
Yeah.
And when you're by yourself, you're just by yourself. No one else sees it. And so it's like, this has been such a practice with my husband because he like mirrors so many things back to me of just like, okay, I'm irritated with him, but I'm really just irritated.
It's never about him.
Yeah. It's never about him.
Yeah.
So just closing my eyes and taking those deep breaths. And it's like, why are you irritated right now? Oh, well, he's doing this and it's bringing this out in me. Okay. Where does this come from? Right. And it's like, I don't want to feel those feelings.
Yes.
Does it feel good to feel those feelings? Yeah, because I'm going back into the victimhood of my entire existence, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's safe.
It's what like, you've been patterned with since childhood. So it's
for sure.
It's familiar. It's like having a drink out of a bottle, like a baby getting soothed by a cocktail of chemical hormones that it's used to, that it was raised on.
Yes.
If you will.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Your relationship with Pat and the amount of self-responsibility that you both have. Yeah. The amount of awareness and the amount of space. I think those are really key because I see in so many relationships, including many that I've been in, where you could get irritated with him. He could be like, why are you being such an asshole to me?
Literally.
And start projecting back onto you. And then you two are in a victim perpetrator cycle with each other, a trauma cycle.
Yeah.
And so there's this thing that happens when we're unconditionally loved and somebody has the space to pause and be with us in what we're explaining or going through in a way that is just so clean energetically where you can't help but look into their eyes. And it's like, for me, it's this melting feeling where I know I'm being anxious or irritated or snippy or cold. And then the person that loves me is just looking back, taking me very seriously, not making me feel silly, and going, yeah, I understand. Okay. And then I'm like hearing my shrill voice and then it just starts to soften and soften. And I'll be like, okay, you know what? I'm sorry about the way that I just said that, but it's not because they made me feel like shit. It's not because they were just like, sometimes it's necessary to walk out of situations, right? But hopefully we're in relationships where we're growing in a gentle way together. And it is that clean, clear mirror. At least it has been for my life and my experience this year, where I automatically know what I'm doing. Yeah. Because the other person has given me the space to really come back into my own awareness just by holding up a mirror of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they are mirrors. Our relationships are such beautiful mirrors, but then also honoring that they're humans going through their human experience and with their human traumas and their human past and all of it, And so it's like when one person is going through those, pieces of life, it's like then the other person is holding that like wise adult role.
Right.
While the one is going into like all of it, the one person's holding that wise adult, role. And that's been one thing that we do often in a relationship of like, okay, I see you. And instead of my wounded child meeting your wounded child and then like having a nice wounded child fight, let's like, let me hold this as the wise adult and not like, I know that you want to go there, but we're not going to. And then hold that so that we actually can resolve this.
Right.
Instead of going into a big blowout argument, which we know it's not going to take us anywhere.
Right. And that holding back that impulse to maybe say the thing right away.
Yeah.
Because that's a thing I've learned. I always thought we had to like really fiery, be like, no, I just disagree with what you're saying. Or, now I'm recognizing I can be hurt by something that someone has said.
Yes.
And I can just allow it to land softly like a feather inside of my body and go, wow, that really hurt.
Yeah.
Because now I'm making a story that they think this about me or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let the situation soften, and I might come back a day or two later and say, I noticed when we had this conversation, this feeling arose inside my body. I just wanted to name it because it was there for me. I don't need you to adjust anything at this moment. If I do, I can let you know, but it just felt important for me to voice something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that time afterwards is like, right. We have whatever it is that we have, and that time afterwards is our time to really understand it and like let whatever happen change the dynamic moving forward.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so important. Especially in, a friendship and a romantic relationship, right? In anything, it's so important.
Yes.
But that's what it is, like two people growing in their power separately and then doing it together. But we often in relationships forget that it's separate.
Yes.
Right? It's like, well, this is our relationship. This is the marriage. This is it. And it's like, what is a marriage or a relationship, right? It's one human dedicated to their growth, their evolution, working on that self-love, the healing and in their power, the other person doing the same thing. And then we can come together. Like the relationship's that third entity.
Yes.
That if one is, like at 20% and the other is at 80%, like that relationship's only going to be as strong as the one person is able to bring to it.
Yes.
And so when you really want to focus on your relationship, and this is with anything, it's like both people have to be dedicated to it.
Yes, absolutely. So as we sort of bring this to a close, I'm thinking about, wow, we've covered just as
everything,
just as I expected. We could do many, many more of these, and I would like to.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. And we have our matching bracelets. I just saw that again. Shout out to Nick Onken for these amazing bracelets that Jen and I both wore today that he made us. Thinking about what you're most excited about this year and the offerings that you have. And if you want to talk a little bit more, I love this theme and this phrase of like millionaire mindset, but really bringing in this energetic piece that you do so well, because there's so many wealth and abundance coaches out there, as there is with every type of coaching. But I see this piece in you, this embodiment piece that I really I am very in alignment with, and I think many listening to this show will also feel in alignment with as well. So I'd love to let people know what's coming up for you.
I love it.
And how they can find you and and connect with you more deeply online. So if you want to give all that information, that would be awesome.
Well, I'm always on Instagram. You know this, the Jenn Kennedy, two N's.
The Jenn with two N's.
Jenn, two N.
Kennedy.
Yes. Jenn Kennedy is like a cat lady. She's like probably like in her 60s. Tried to message her many times to get the handle.
Oh, regular Jenn Kennedy.
She's, I don't know if she's still here on Earth side.
Okay.
Yep. I've been trying to get that handle, and I was like, well, I'll just eat that
blessings.
Jenn Kennedy. Yes. Blessings.
Jenn Kennedy.
Blessings.
But we have the Jenn Kennedy.
But we have the right here. So I'm always on Instagram, like always there. I do live programs each month, sometimes every other month. We've got, longer programs that go really in depth with things. And we've got shorter programs that are really, like quick, but deep and like potent experiences. But really, my work is centered around women really rising into their power with money. I really, truly believe that when heart-centered humans hold wealth, like what this world gets to be as a result.
Ooh, yeah, I'm getting chills.
Right? This paradigm of the world changes of like money and power and grinding, right? To like when women are heart-centered and we literally, truly change the world because of who it is that we are and what it is that we lead, we get to be so wealthy and rich as a result. And then like, that's how we really start to change the 3D paradigm, right? Of this earth. Because so many people are heart-centered and they're so like led and they're changing the world. We've talked about it. But that money piece is a block. And it's like, well, we're only going to be able to change the actual planet, like the economy, the ecosystems that we live in to a certain extent, right?
Right.
Because if we're all broke, but helping people, Like we can't get our money into charities in third world countries and teaching these women, that are having to sell themselves to sex trafficking. Like we can't get into these countries to teach these women how to actually rise in money and entrepreneurship.
Wow. This is very integrated. I mean, this is like so many people throw making money out the window because they say it's not spiritual. And the way that you're describing this now is, hey, you want to be a change maker? Initiate yourself into the ability to be able to do that.
Let's look at the biggest change makers on the planet.
And we got to know the rules of the game.
Yeah.
If we want to change the game itself,
100%.
We got to be able to work and shift within it.
100%.
Wow.
100%. Because when we all hold the wealth of this earth, like, are you kidding? Could you imagine? Because you can imagine.
I do imagine.
You do imagine, actually,
I
right?
I
often imagine like everything changes. And like, I really do believe that source, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, like I do believe that they, it, he, she, whatever it is, desires for us to be rich.
Yeah.
Like we came to this human experience to live this human experience. And like, you better believe we came here with a sense of wonder and excitement and joy of what this human experience is all about. And a part of the human experience in the 3D world is money. They've decided that it's money. So if we came here to live the most extraordinary experience and live the most extraordinary life, then of course money is a part of that.
Right. Because money is energy, right? And
when we know that.
And when we are rich with energy, I mean, right now in this current year, 2022, money is kind of like a really big thing.
Yeah.
But, we're hearing about crypto and decentralizing wealth. And we don't know what the next couple 100,000 years look like. And maybe at some point we get back to being really in touch with the riches all around us, being the riches of the earth and prioritizing those once again. But what right now, where the heroines and the heroes find themselves in the journey is, guess what? Third dimensional paper money is still a thing right now.
Yes.
And maybe that will shift. And if I've gained the skills to be adaptable, if what money looks like changes as we know it, just like life changed as we know it when the internet came in. Were people freaked out about that where people are always freaked out with change. But the point is, if you gain the skills to operate within wealth, it doesn't matter whether you're holding paper money or gold or a handful of dirt. You're going to see the beauty of what's in front of you and know how to create, nurture, shepherd, and steward more of it.
100%. Yep. The richness of life, right?
Yeah.
The richer that we are in our everyday life, and the more that we actually do this work to master money and let go of our old conditioning with money, and the more that we just really realize that money is just an energy. It's a currency that we've humanized in 3D, but it's an energy.
Right.
Then the richer that we actually become financially. And when we lead with our hearts and like really are of service and we let source work through us, of course we get to have the most extraordinary human experience.
Yes.
With money, with wealth, with riches, with all of it.
So, and I want to bring it back one more time to putting that energy, I'm going to call it in your gratitude bank every morning. You're choosing to take energy, which we've already said, money is just a type of energy. It gets exchanged. It has its own breath. It moves around from person to person. So you're getting up every day. You're putting your precious energy in a gratitude bank. You're saying, I'm choosing this. For me, I've had a gratitude practice that I do every night in a tiny little notebook I keep on my bedside. It's been like 350 days unbroken, like haven't missed a day, go on a trip, whatever. It always comes with me. And that's the choice that we make. And there will be people listening to this that are like, oh yeah, I know I should do a gratitude practice. People are laughing because they were just thinking that in their head when I said it. I know I should do that. Okay, here's your loving reminder. Because Jenn and I did not get here sitting, talking about these things by saying the shoulds and berating ourselves and staying stuck in the shoulds. And so if you want it, you can have it. You can keep your eyes closed in the morning and just start making lists of things you're grateful for, or you can keep a notebook by your bedside. But practice
Yeah.
bringing this energy into your life little by little. And just like going to the gym and working out and gaining a little muscle, this will gain momentum. And I just want to say that to everybody.
Yeah.
I promise you, it's worth it.
It's so worth it, because there's nothing stronger than the feelings of love and gratitude.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Love, celebration, gratitude. Like there's nothing stronger. And when you exist in that state more and more and more, then guess what? You receive ideas, you receive next steps, you receive
yes,
energy, money in massive amounts.
Yes. Well said.
Yes.
So do you have a website as well where I can
my website's being redone currently. So you could try
Instagram.
Just go to Instagram.
That's the easiest way.
Easiest way.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Is there any final thoughts that you want to share with us today? This has been so rich. Pun intended, Jen.
Intended. Famous last words.
Well, hopefully not your last.
No, I'll be speaking for many, 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 many decades. Famous last words into this microphone for now.
Did you ever manifest something and then you're like, retract?
Oh no.
Cancel.
I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
Abort mission, please.
Yeah.
It would just be the hope, because it's out of my control. So it's such a hope that, 1, 5, 10, however many people, at least one person like can find themselves within this story.
Yes.
And like know what's really possible.
Yeah.
They know your story. They're your people. They know your story. And I love to share like the depths of the debt and the struggle and the stuckness, because I just want everyone to know that like your life can change at any point in time. It's not going to be easy. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's not all like, beautiful experiences. There's going to be a lot. I mean, me and you know this both. Like there's going to be a roller coaster.
Yeah.
There'll be times where like you're down more than you even realize and want to be down. But it's always worth it. It's always worth it. And just to continuously come back home to who you are and remember why you're here. And like if that's the game that you play, then like the game of riches and wealth is just a part of the game. And it gets to be fun.
It gets to be fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For your wisdom, for your energy, for your light, for all that you're doing in the world, for your vivacity, vivaciousness, I want to say. You're such a beautiful, powerful, embodied force. Your energy is disarming, it's welcoming, it's comforting, and also like I wouldn't mess with you. And I love that. That's like a thing that I've been practicing lately as like an energetic I'm playing with is I love you and I won't be fucked with.
Yeah.
Just kind of like holding, what does that feel like in my body?
Yeah.
Because I can get a little too on the I love you side with some things, and then my boundaries get watery, and then I can get on the I won't be fucked with side where it's like a little too fiery. And then I'm burning all these bridges of relationships and I feel righteous in doing so.
Right.
So it's just like,
I like that.
I love you. I see what you're doing, and I will not be moved. Like I will not be moved from my position on something that I'm clear about within my body. And I see that in you. So thank you for embodying and practicing. Trusting your intuition is really important for both men and women to begin allowing themselves to cultivate that skill and initiate themselves into wealth and abundance of all kinds.
I fully receive all of that. Truly.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you.